Are you nervous about starting therapy? I'm Kara Mayer Robinson, a celebrity therapist, coach, and host of the celebrity interview show, Really Famous, which you can catch right here on YouTube. I'm about to answer the most common questions about therapy and share some hard truths so you know what you're getting into and you know how to maximize your experience. Let's do it. How do I find a good therapist? Okay, good question, and probably the most common question that people ask me. Sometimes it takes a little legwork to find that amazing therapist, but I promise you that amazing therapist is out there. And there's not just one or two, there are plenty of amazing therapists, but it's kind of like that old saying that you need to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince. Well, forget the fairy tales, but the similar thing is that yes, sometimes you need to go through a few therapists to find one that gels with you. So the first thing you want to do is a little research. Gather a whole bunch of names. Don't stop at like one or two. Get maybe 4, 5, 6 recommendations. Ask your friends, ask your doctor, ask family members, or if you know somebody who's mentioned their amazing therapist, go to them. You can also go to platforms and online directories like psychologytoday.com. So for example, Psychology Today has profiles of like so many therapists, and you could just punch in specialties or location or any preferences like that. And most profiles have a lot of info that the therapist shares, and you really get a feel for like who that therapist is and how they work. I have a profile on Psychology Today. Hopefully that helps you get a better idea of who I am if you're considering me as your therapist or personal coach. You can also cross-check therapists that you find from your doctor, let's say, or a friend or family member. So gather that list and then Google them, check them out, see what their credentials are, see what their picture looks like. Sometimes you kind of get a little bit of a feeling about if that therapist may or may not be for you just by looking at them. But go a little deeper, see what their philosophy is, maybe what some of their techniques are, and then reach out to them. See if they're taking new people, see what their rates are, then set up an appointment or two. Give it a few sessions. Sometimes it takes a bit to gel, and a big part of therapy is forming a good relationship and forming trust with your therapist. So it doesn't always happen in session 1 or even session 2, but I would say if you go maybe like 3 or 4 times and you're not feeling it, it's fine. Move on to the next one. Don't waste your time, but don't give up on therapy. What can I expect at the beginning of therapy? Okay, so every therapist is different, but I'll tell you how I do it. So when you start therapy with me, first we start with a big, probably an hour-long session where you give me lots of information about what's going on in your life and about what brought you into therapy in the first place. I'll ask questions and probe where I feel like there's more info that I want to have about you, which will help me figure out how to help you. In the beginning, there's going to be a lot of kind of sharing of your information. So your therapist will ask you questions about how you're feeling now, what's going on in your life, where your struggles are. And yes, they will probably ask you a bit about your childhood too, because it's relevant, it's important. Sometimes we learn things in our childhood that we don't even realize we learned that are showing themselves in adulthood and not working out so well for us. So it's up to a therapist to kind of connect those dots and help you figure out what's holding you back in life. After a few sessions, then you'll really start to get into the meat of the matter. One thing I tell everybody who starts therapy with me is it's not a linear path. So lots of times there are twists and turns. We meander over here and then over there. That's normal, and that's how therapy is done. At least certain types of therapy. There are other types that are very structured and follow an organized set of steps to get you from point A to point B. But for many therapists, it's a process of discovery. And sometimes you'll be talking about and exploring one area of your life, and something will come up that the therapist will think, you know what, we should explore this a little bit more. And then you'll go into that a little bit. So that's part of the process, and it really is important to be comfortable with that. And also know that there are going to be days when you feel like you don't want to go talk to your therapist. That's normal too. It doesn't mean you don't show up though. It means you go anyway. And guess what you do? You tell your therapist exactly that. I didn't even feel like having this session today. I kind of wanted to cancel. That is good for the therapist to know so they can help you work through that. Okay, how do I prepare for therapy? Well, you really don't have to do much to prepare. You just have to be willing to open up and share as much as you're comfortable sharing. Just know that the more you tell your therapist, the more they will be able to help you. If you feel embarrassed about something or you don't want to seem this way or that way, I assure you, your therapist is not there to judge you. They're there to help you. So the more you give them, the more they can help you. It's one of those things where it's like the more you put in, the more you get out. Totally true for therapy. Here's a question some people have about starting therapy. Will I even get better? Well, it's going to depend on a lot of things, of course, like how much effort you put into it, whether you show up for your appointments, whether you think about therapy and what you learned in therapy when you're not in the session, and if you're a good match with your therapist. But chances are, yes, you are going to feel better. But be patient. It doesn't always happen right away. Sometimes it does. You may feel a little bit better because you know you're working on something and you're doing something about whatever's going on in your life. So that can feel good right away. But for you to really see a difference in your life, sometimes that takes a while. But I can tell you that if you stick with it long term, you may be amazed at how much better you feel for life. So how long will it take to notice a difference? It could be as soon as the first session, and you leave that session saying, I feel good that I'm doing something about it. I didn't expect it to be this much of a relief. Now I feel heard. There are a million things that can come out of the first session to help you feel better, or the second session, or the third. But usually when you notice a difference, it's a little bit longer than that. It is different for everyone. Therapy is about as custom as it comes. So know that whatever's happening for you is probably normal. How long does therapy usually last? Well, that's another question that has a lot of different answers. It depends a lot on A, the type of therapy that you're doing, B, where you are, C, how you handle the process, and D, a whole host of other things. But what I can say is there are certain types of therapy where they have a structured setup, like, okay, this is going to be a 6 to 8 week process. So this is how we're going to start. And these are the steps that we're going to go through. And by the end of the 8-week program, you're going to be done. So that happens. Other times it's more of a dynamic process that unfolds as it unfolds. So it could be 6 months. It could be 8 months. It could be a year and a half. It could be your whole life if you want it. There are plenty of people who realize that having a therapist on their side to kind of go through all of the things as they're going through them in life to help keep them on the path that they've worked so hard to get to, that is a really valuable thing. So if you want that, you can have that. If you don't want that and you want something shorter, you can have that too. Just talk to your therapist about it. Let them know, these are my goals. This is really how long I would like to be in therapy. And if you're not sure, great, leave it open. Will my therapist be completely silent and I'll basically have to figure everything out myself? I'm going to say no to that. While I know when I was trained in grad school that there was a lot of thought that, yes, you need to just kind of be a blank slate for the person you're talking to so that they can work things out and use you to play against. That's a little bit less so the case right now. I think that many of us have moved in the direction of a little more back and forth with the people we're talking to. So I can tell you that I interact with people I'm seeing for therapy a lot. I definitely have them talking more than I'm talking, but when they tell me things, I help them see things that I'm seeing. So that's how I see myself, as like a guide. I can take what I know, my skills, my experience, my training, to figure out what is going on in your life. And then I can show you, okay, so this is probably connected to that. Do you see how that may be the case? So you'll see me doing that a lot in therapy. That's my style of therapy. For other people, it may be more silent. Or for other therapists, it may be more of a thing where they're directing you and telling you, okay, now do this, take what you're thinking here and change it into this. So again, there's a variation, but you're starting to get that. Will my therapist judge me? I can speak for me and for most therapists I know, absolutely not. We are not here to judge you. We are here to see you and understand you and guide you. So whatever it is you may feel like you're reluctant to share or reluctant to let them see about you, I can guarantee that the thing that you're most afraid of being judged for is the thing that you really need to let your therapist see, because that's what you need help with. bring it to the therapist and let them show you that you're not being judged, but there are things you can do to change that if you want to. Is therapy hard? Sometimes, yeah, for sure. There are ups and downs, and certain times you may struggle with the emotions that come up in therapy. But I can tell you that is usually a really good thing. So it's not just about the pain and the agony of it. There's a reason for it. You may have heard that saying where the only way to get to the other side of something is to go through it. So therapy is like that. If something is getting in your way and stopping you in life, it's important to be able to face it and get through it so that you can get to the other side. Sometimes that's a little painful. Other times, therapy's not painful. It's like a bunch of aha moments, and you're like, oh my God, I never saw things like that. I never realized I did that, or I never understood that that's what was going on here. Now I see things really differently. So sometimes, yeah, it may be hard. Other times, it may just feel like a lot of flow going on. Also know that you're not alone. At your hardest moments, your therapist is there with you. They are there to be in that space with you and to take you through that space, to hold your hand and bring you to that other side. Your therapist is your partner and collaborator. You're in this together. Does insurance cover the cost of therapy? That's always a fun one. Well, we're now all aware that health insurance isn't always the greatest system for everybody. I have to tell you that most of the time, a therapist that you find is not going to work directly with any insurance companies. So most of us do not. I don't take insurance directly. A lot of the problem is that insurance companies are a pain in the neck. They make agreements with therapists to pay them this much and make them jump through this many hoops to get paid. So a lot of therapists are like, I can't work with this, so they don't. So a lot of people end up paying out of pocket or getting out of network reimbursement, which is certainly can be good and make therapy more affordable. Many of the people I work with do get some type of reimbursement. It may be a little, it may be a lot. It totally depends on your specific insurance plan. The only way to find out if it'll be covered or not is to call your insurance company before you start therapy. So your therapist will tell you if they are in network or out of network. If they are in network, that basically means that the insurance company and the therapist have agreed to work together in a certain way. So if that's the case, then you basically pay your copayment. Maybe it's $20, maybe it's $40 for every session. And then your therapist and the insurance company will kind of work out the rest themselves. If your therapist is out of network, which is what I am with insurance companies, then you pay your therapist directly, and your therapist can give you what's called a super bill, which is a list of sessions that you've had and how much you've paid. You submit that to your insurance company, and then they pay you whatever portion they have agreed to pay for out-of-network benefits. So what do? You call your insurance company and say, yes, hi, I'm looking for mental health benefits or behavioral health benefits. That's another term for it. So the question is, what are my out-of-network mental health benefits? And they will tell you something like, well, after your deductible, let's say you have a $500 deductible, we cover 50% of your office visits. So what that means is you pay your therapist up front, and let's say your therapist charges $250 a session. So if you have a $500 deductible, you will have 2 sessions that will not be covered at all. And then after your 3rd session, your insurance company will start reimbursing you about $125 per session. Here's how I work it. If you are seeing me for therapy, you pay me directly. And then at the end of every month, I give you a statement, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can submit it to your insurance company, or you can just rip it up. Not really rip it up, I send it over the computer. But anyway, if you want to submit it to your insurance company, then it says paid in full on it. It lists every session you've had that month with me, and it says paid in full, please submit all payments to the member. So that means if you get reimbursements, they will cut you a check and send it to you. One last word on insurance and therapy. It is a bummer that insurance makes it hard to get therapy. But I can also tell you that if you can figure out a way to pay for therapy, the investment can be enormous. So it may seem like a lot in the beginning, but after your life starts to turn around, you'll see that it was well worth it and beyond, especially if you really do the work and you really change your life. Why is therapy so expensive? Well, your therapist has been through a lot of training. They didn't just wake up one morning and put up a shingle and say, I'm a therapist now. Your therapist has gone to a lot of schooling. Also, there's continuing education. So therapists have to every year go through a certain amount of classes to stay up to date on what the latest treatments are and how to help people in different ways. So your therapist is very educated and puts a lot of time into training. Plus, it's not just a matter of your therapist kind of sitting and listening to you for an hour. I mean, there's some of that goes on, but there's a whole lot of thinking that goes on. It takes a lot of skill. It's not as easy as it looks. What happens if I'm late to a session? Oh, that's a bummer. For you, not for your therapist. When you schedule a session with your therapist saves that time slot for you. They don't give it to anybody else. It's yours. So if you arrive late to it, then you're going to miss a little bit of it. But your therapist will probably tell you this right off the bat. And most therapists have a cancellation policy of 24 to 48 hours advance notice, which means if you cancel or you try to reschedule, but they can't reschedule your session within 24 to 48 hours, you're going to lose the session. It's a bummer, but a therapist can't be constantly changing around their schedule because of people changing when they want to see them. Is online therapy as good as in-person therapy? Well, there are different schools of thought on this. Right now, in this era, like we're all on our phones, we're all on our computers, and it's really kind of nice to be able to be at home or even at work or in the car or wherever it's convenient for you and you feel like you can speak freely and privately. Anywhere works. And so teletherapy actually can work pretty well. I do teletherapy now, and I can tell you it's really nice. I've had people call in from the car because it's too crowded in the house. There are guests over and it's too loud and they don't feel like they can speak privately. They go into their car, it's fine. Or they can be in bed if they feel like they can't get out of bed, fine. They can have their dog next to them during the session. They can be walking their dog. I mean, that doesn't always work as well because you're a little distracted, but anything goes. And I feel like if it works for you, it definitely can work. Is it nice to see somebody in person? Absolutely. I'm a huge in-person person, especially when it comes to doing interviews for my show, Really Famous. But for therapy, it really takes a lot of the barriers away, which is nice. And so especially if you live somewhere somewhat remote and there aren't a lot of therapists around you, yeah, teletherapy can be great. Most therapists today do offer telehealth. So they will do it. Even people who do it in their office mostly, they'll still offer that as an option. And many therapists today are strictly doing online therapy. So find a therapist, ask them if they do online therapy, and get started. Next up, I give you the scoop on common questions and dilemmas that happen in the middle of therapy, such as what do you do when you're too embarrassed to share something super personal? Or what do you do when you feel like you've plateaued? Make sure you tap that subscribe button so you're ready when I share it here on YouTube. I'm Kara, a licensed therapist, celebrity coach, and host of the celebrity interview show, Really Famous. If you got anything at all out of this chat, please click that like button. If you'd like to start therapy or coaching with me, visit hollywoodwellness.org. You'll see a link to that in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. Keep your questions coming and keep the comments coming. I love to hear what you're thinking.